All right.
What's up?
The red light is on. So this is Liam O'Brien. That is not your full name. Your full name is much longer from what I remember.
Yeah.
So what is your full name and how did we meet? And tell us a little about yourself.
Okay. Well, so there's like my full legal name, which is Liam Anton O'Brien. But then there's like my full family name, which would be like Liam Anton O'Brien Devonte Baldwin. So that's like all the different I found of like my mother's names and my dad's names and just all my different families that I come from. And I'm sure if I were really rigorous in my research, I'd find some more stuff. We met through Asolo grad school.
Yay!
Which we're in our third year of. So tired. I think I'm trying to think of like what my first memory of you was. And I think it was like movement class. And you being like, oh, on the rubber balls that Eliza gave us to like massage out your back. And so we were all lying on the ground. And I was just staring up the ceiling as everyone was like weeping and crying and moaning around me. And I distinctly remember in that moment going like, did I make a mistake? Like, I'm in a French nut house from the 17th century. Like, what's happening? Turns out I didn't make a mistake, so that's really good. But I think that's my first memory of you. Was this a mistake?
That's amazing. Yeah. I remember when you first came to Tallahassee.
Oh shit! Yeah.
And you showed. Do you want to kind of talk about that story a little bit?
I showed up like at orientation at Tallahassee, and no one had met me yet. They didn't even know what I looked like, except for like vague Facebook photos, because I had like been waitlisted and then accepted and then turned down and then suddenly called out of the blue, I think like a month or 3 weeks before school started and got into the program. So it was kind of just one of those like, oh, I'm just going to show up, I guess. So I drove all the way from New Mexico in my mom's like Subaru Land Rover that was just full of books, and me and my girlfriend at the time drove just smoking cigarettes the whole time. I showed up in Tallahassee and sat in this room of theater orientation people, and everyone went around the room, and it was like the undergraduates as well as the graduates. So I started seeing all them, and I was the last person to speak. And I just kind of stood up. I was like, "Hi, I'm Liam," and everyone went, "Ah, it's Liam! We finally meet you!" And I just remember being so like, "I'm not engaging in this." I was just like, "Yeah, that's me." And everyone's so excited, and then the immediate dissipation and awkward energy of like, "Wow, this dude's kind of a dick."
Stop.
No,
Yeah.
but like no one had met me, and I didn't know any of you guys. I knew Chris Hayhurst because he had sent me a Facebook message that was like, "Hey bro, I promise this isn't a scam. I'm one of the classmates coming in, like all this info, and then I reiterate this is not a scam." And I was like, no one, like, that's a scam. No one would say that so many times unless it's a scam. It turns out that's who he is, man. He's just the kind of person that's like, this is not a scam. You're like, oh fuck, normally you don't have to say that.
Reassuring again and again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where we first met, was Tallahassee. That's right.
Well, dude, what do you want to talk a little bit about, since we are on the grad school topic? Like, do you want to talk a little bit about the whole grad school chapter for you and what that's been like?
Sure. I mean, it's just been my life for the past 3 years. I would say it's been hugely shaping for me, as I imagine for everyone, in terms of just like finding out where my edges are and finding out what I do and don't know and what I do and don't agree with. It was a very also it was the first time for me living outside of my home state, like away from my family and stuff, so I was also learning a lot about just how to be a functioning adult out in reality. So I would say it was a pretty big reality slap all around in the beginning. And then it really became a place where I was able to just focus in on what I was thinking, what I was doing, the sort of what my what I wanted from acting, what I believe acting is, and all that stuff. And so it kind of became what I imagine grad school is supposed to be, like a eco or a greenhouse for me to like grow all these ideas. And now I am like so ready for it to be done, but also so utterly not ready to contemplate what comes after. I mean, yeah, like this is the end. There's no more theater school after this unless I got a PhD in something, but that's not theater school, or that's not acting school, I should say. And so it's been a really eye-opening, and I would think like soul-stretching experience, which has been very good, and I've met a lot of wonderful people, but it's also just been it's a marathon. It's a real marathon, yeah.
So, what were your expectations coming into grad school of what it would be, and then leaving now, experiencing it? Like, what is a lesson that you've viscerally taken away from it?
I think kind of my expectation was like I would go to a place and be told the right way to do something, which was so not what happened. Well, sort of was, but sort of wasn't. Because the teachers who did tell me the right way to do something, I'm like, fuck you, there's no right way. So, you know, it's kind of like, why did I expect, I don't know. I definitely thought it would be, I didn't really have many expectations because I didn't have enough prep time to really like daydream about it or imagine what the classes would be. And I hadn't visited the campus or anything, so I was really going in blind. So I didn't have many expectations other than like the general expectation that I had of graduate school as like an overarching institution in the US of like, oh, it prepares me to be a part of the workforce, it'll give me professional skills, we'll talk about the industry, we will, you know, like it was basically like whatever I imagined med school to be for theater, I guess, was my expectation of just like, it'll just be someplace where I get way more specific and learn how to do it right. And in a certain sense, I guess that was true, but I guess like walking away from grad school, one of the biggest lessons, or like what's something I viscerally learned, a lot of different things. Big things for me are just kind of like, there's so many. I don't know which one is the most visceral.
How about 2 or 3, the things that are popping out?
Yeah, I guess like no one will live your life for you, so like that's something I've been thinking about a bit, of just kind of like you gotta, if you want to do something, you gotta do it for yourself. You know, no one else will like come along and in a very practical way, they won't tell you how to dress, they won't I mean, they will, but they won't like actually lay out your clothes in the morning, they won't cook you breakfast. No one will do that for you, but in a more like profound sense, like, you know, if you want to get better at something or really investigate yourself, no one's going to do that for you. You just got to kind of do it for yourself. And that's a practice, that's a daily practice that you just, there's no real glory in it. You just kind of do it. It's like brushing your teeth. I mean, I guess there's some glory in brushing your teeth because, like, you have teeth, but you can lord that over.
Maintaining a gift.
You can lord that over all your non-tooth friends, and that's not glory either. That's just privilege.
Hashtag tooth privilege. Yeah.
So I guess no one will live your life for you is one big thing. Kind of connected to that is like you gotta take responsibility for what you learn. Which is something one of our classmates, Alex, really helped me learn. I'm just kind of like, sure, other people may have like figured out techniques, theories, ideas and stuff, but at the end of the day, when you absorb that, it's you absorbing it, not them. So like whatever that is that you absorb is just it. You can't get the right version of it because we're not telepathic. We can't, you know, ever fully get just the pristine, perfect idea of something from another person. So whatever I get has to be good enough for me to work with.
Could you talk a little more about that? That's fascinating. Like getting to the point where you have an idea of what you want to get out of a lesson, right? For you, like what what have you figured out are some of the things that you really like taking away from lessons and incorporating into your life?
I figured out, I guess I don't like having the expectation of what am I going to get out of this, because that implies that there is a correct version. But like, I guess it's not something I like enjoy that I've learned. It's something I kind of don't like actually, but I've just learned to accept it. Is this thing of like, oh, whatever I understand is what I understand. Like I can't. It's not that you can't learn more. You can absolutely do that, but you can't know if you learned the right thing. You know what I mean? So. And I don't really like that, but I've like just gotten to a place of accepting it, and it's interesting to me, like once I started accepting that, how much less like actual mental energy I had to exert while learning things. Because instead of like cross-analyzing every single little thought that pops up into my head as to whether or not that does or doesn't work, I was just kind of like, well, I was told this is the technique or this is the lesson, this is what comes up for me, I guess that's what I got. And you can certainly like workshop stuff with people, you know, like you can be like, hey, like, is this going the right way? I mean, I think that's what teachers are for, is like just being like, hey, am I actually on the right path? Or not even the right, but am I in the ballpark? But at the end of the day, like just not waiting to think, oh, I finally know I've got the right answer to like voice my opinions, because I don't know and I will never know, so I might as well voice what I have. And I think that's sort of close to me for like just letting go of this perfectionism and this desire to reach purity or idealhood, which is like, again, one of those things that it's not really that I like it, I've just sort of thought to myself of like, oh, like I can live with that, I can start living with that. Yeah.
What have been some things that you have learned that you didn't like learning?
All of it, man. No,
There were just little pieces, little ants on a piece of dirt in
no, it's a weird relation, like I like learning all of it, but I don't like learning all, you know, it's a constant shifting thing, but I guess like for me, some things I don't like that I've learned are like, how much it is usually my own fault when I don't know, fault's not even the right word, but how much I fail to be an advocate for myself, and how much of like, I think I don't like that I've learned like so much of confidence is just like literally just having confidence and you're just bullshitting it because everyone is. Like I don't like that. I like to imagine that if you if you get the right perfect equation, you suddenly get confidence, but it's kind of like, no, you could be right and still have no confidence. That it's like not connected to the ethic, moral, or spiritual correct path is kind of annoying to me. Because that means some people out there who are very confident are not correct. And that's, as someone who easily is attracted to confident people and wants to like believe in them, that's just more work for me to be like, oh, now I gotta really be aware of what people are telling me. Yeah, I don't think I've liked some of the things I've learned. I think a lot of it has just again been like, I guess it's like similar to like bad life experiences where arguably I don't like that they happen to me, but when I look back and I'm like, oh, if I could just change that and like not do that, I also wouldn't do that, because I'm like, oh, but then I wouldn't have learned this thing that I think that I do like. So like some of the things I've learned that I don't like have led to things that I like knowing. So even if I don't, you know, even in the past, if there were like past experiences that aren't great, and I remember like thinking about this a couple of days ago where I was like, I wouldn't actually change that. Like,
could you tell the actual story of what happened, like in life? Is that?
Yeah, I could tell. I mean, it's a whole myriad of different things. Like, and it sort of continues. But like, for me, one thing I was thinking of in this particular context was like, I was a bit of a slut back in undergrad. Yeah, fuck yeah. I don't know why that's my slut symbol.
Mr.
Rocker.
Slut.
Mr. Slut. Jesus, people are gonna see this. No, I wasn't a slut, but I was not very like aware of myself sexually, and I just kind of didn't give a fuck, and I let myself not consider the feelings of like my friends and my family about the people I was attracted to. And this coming to terms with, oh, I thought I just, you know, your actions do affect more than just the people it's between and stuff, and so that was something for a long time I regretted, and I still do regret, but I was thinking about it the other day, and I was kind of like, if I actually could go back and change that, I probably wouldn't, because it did sort of steer me off a pretty bad life course of just like not contemplating, you know, like being more responsible about if I'm in a situation where I'm attracted to someone but I know it's not okay, or I know it isn't okay, like it might hurt someone I'm close to. So I like to think like, oh, I've learned a lot from that maybe if I hadn't had that happen, you know, who knows, maybe I would have been like 30 years down the road married and just cheated on my wife because I never really learned like, oh, people don't forgive shit like that. And now I know, oh, people don't forgive shit like that. So if there were an opportunity, because I've always been a bit of an opportunist person, so I think I was lucky enough that while it hurt, I didn't really harm anyone in doing it, you know, I didn't like ruin a marriage or anything like that. And so I like to think that next, as I grow older, if there is an opportunity where I could make a similar, like, not great decision, not classy decision, I would be able to be like, oh wait, been there, done that, thanks, I'm cool, I've learned that, nah, not for me. Which is not to judge, I'm not a very judgmental person when it comes to this stuff, so like, if anyone watching is kind of like, oh, what do you mean? You can do whatever the fuck you want. I'm like, yeah, you can, I just realized I can't. So it's also made me more open-minded, because I realized like I think you can't figure out a great moral ethical code that wipes over everything. You just gotta kind of realize what for yourself can you do and not do, of course barring like illegal stuff, but in terms of just, you know, like how you treat your families and friends. Like some people out there really have no problem cheating and or have no problem if they're cheated on. I don't know, you know, it's whatever. And if they're truly okay with that, that's fine. I just learned where my personal boundaries are, so I think that's a thing I would not want to retract. Even, well, I don't know. You never know. Like I say that, but a part of me is like, yeah, you would.
That's the tricky part of it, right? Like translating the abstract, the lessons that we learn and we conceptualize in the abstract and applying it to life. You know, like that's the ultimate like bridging.
And it causes, you gotta be gentle. I mean, I guess another thing that I've learned, not just from that, but just from going to grad school, is like learning to be like gentle to your younger self. At least for me, like from a very, like, I was always like, I need to be perfect, I need to not make mistakes, I need to not piss people off. And I would just repress all that, and then that would cause me to eventually do something stupid. And so just learning to look back and be like, oh, like, when you're young, you do stupid shit and you learn from it. And so long as you learn from it and no one was actually hurt, I think that's also a pretty important caveat of like, no one was actually hurt. But so long as you learn from it, no one was really hurt, like, that's okay, you get better. And the important thing is to know, like, oh, where do I need to learn? What do I need to learn from? Because I mean, I don't know, my issues have been pretty mundane to some people out there who, you know, maybe struggle with addiction or like gambling or like, you know, where they're cheating on like, not their exes or something, but like their wives or their husbands, you know, and I would say those are much more, they're higher stakes, and I think the more I can learn that avoids me from getting into a really high stakes situation like that, the better, like, even if it means I wasn't a classy teenager. Because I don't know many classy teenagers, man.
Yeah. The people who are classy teenagers peak in high school, right?
Yeah,
Or something.
yeah,
Isn't
yeah.
that the...
Or you never make any, you know, because there have also been times that, like, you never take any risks of, like, and this is not in terms of sexual stuff or anything, but I'm thinking of, like, if I was always just cautious and never took any risks, you know, like, if you never, like, get on a zip line or jump on a trampoline.
Yeah, put yourself in an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah,
right?
like, taking a clown class was incredibly uncomfortable for me, but it was a good, you know, so you shouldn't avoid all uncomfortability, but you gotta learn where your lines are. And I'm sure for some people, like, taking a clown class would be like, nah, I'm done. But for me, it was really eye-opening and like, oh, I can be an idiot and goofy and show people. And like, part of acting too is I gotta be really comfortable, or try to be really comfortable with letting people see my faults and my good side too. This is all very vulnerable. I don't like it. As I say, I need to be better at it.
Well, I think that gets back into something that you were talking about. One of the things that you didn't like learning, or one of the things that came up to you was being what came to light for you was being a better advocate for yourself. So after that blind spot had been revealed, or you realized that it was a bigger thing that needed to be focused on, what were some techniques or strategies you used to become a better advocate for yourself?
Apologizing, like seriously and earnestly apologizing, and also, but before that, like I had to first like admit that I had a blind spot, so that took a bit of time. I don't know, for some people it's therapy, I think everyone has their, you know, some people it's gardening, I don't like, but for me, I guess the technique was just kind of like acting on the impulse within me that said, you need to address this, and it's been that way for like, not even mistake, it's also kind of how I think you get better at skills too though, like the impulse to get better at acting or the impulse to get better at conversation is a similar impulse of this thing of like, oh, I know I'm not there yet, and I know I can be better, let me find out how. And then you kind of let go of it if you let go of the shit that's holding you back. Yeah. Like, I don't know if I want you to show this to people now. I'm so unconcerned.
What's amazing about it is there is a, like, I can sense it too, that there's a stepping into vulnerability here that's like very,
Yeah.
you know, and it's beautiful because like it's also, at least from what I'm seeing and perceiving, is like, you know, you are now like voicing what you've digested. You know?
I suppose so.
And that's a gift. You're gifting that to people.
Yeah. Some people are just gonna look and be like, that trashy. I want to swear. I'm gonna try.
No. People
like,
swear all the
trashy
time.
boy,
That's fine.
that trashy man.
That's
Look at him. He's a shitty friend, which I was. But yeah, it is vulnerable, and I think it's weird to me, the capturing of vulnerability, because like, so for instance, this is a good example of like, I'm okay voicing these things in conversations with people, like when I know there's a certain impermanence to it, but the idea of a camera being here capturing my vulnerability and the knowledge that, oh, someone can just view me being vulnerable over and over again, and pick apart like why it's not really okay anyway, is weird. And I think that probably, like, I don't know, I'm an anxious person. I think a lot of people suffer from anxiety. In terms of around like social media and stuff, I get worried of not saying the right thing, not doing the right thing, because there's this opening of like, oh, people can just go back and look at it again and again. Which is like, I think okay too. Like, that's how I personally have tried to get over that anxiety of just like, oh, like, it means when I was in like kindergarten, I remember like this kid once bit me and I hit him with a stick. And he didn't have to write me an apology letter, but I had to write him an apology letter because I hit him with a stick. Like little 6-year-old or however old you are in kindergarten. And I remember I was so humiliated. I was like, oh my God, people are going to be able to read that I like have to apologize for this later. I'm kind of like, well, but then I look like, I don't know, I think that's maybe a good thing. Like, it keeps you humble of just like, oh, if you fuck up and you say something you shouldn't, or you do something you shouldn't, people are going to know. And it gets rid of, because I know for me, a lot of my own personal, like, destructive impulses come from, like, a place of, like, oh, I could just eat that cookie. No one will know. And it's like, well, what if they could know? Would you eat the cookie still? It's like, well, maybe you would, in which case, good power to you. But for me, I'd be like, no, I wouldn't eat it.
Well, I'm interested now in your idea of being in the present, your relationship to past, present, and future, of where your mind lies, right? And like, how often do you often think about like where is the next step going to be? Do you feel like you are often very happy being in the present, or do you live in the past a lot? Like, yeah.
I don't know.
Nairi.
I know the loud
Nairi, the
conversation
guest
is
star.
Um,
Nairi, be quiet.
I think I'm constantly switching, you know, and you always think when you're in it that that's how it's always going to be, and then it changes. You know, because sometimes I'm stuck in the past, and sometimes I'm stuck in the present, and sometimes I'm stuck in the future. I don't even know, like, I've been trying to like learn a lot about philosophy and stuff, which I mean I'm not qualified to talk about any of it, but it's casual. It's just I don't know how linear past, present, and future is. I don't really know how it's affecting my body at any given time. So like there are times when I think I'm super present and in the moment, but my body isn't. Or there are times when I think I'm out of it, but I'm actually really, in terms of physical senses, aware of what's going on. And there's a certain degree to me of, I think, in my personal experience, I don't know if this is for everyone, but for me personally, I feel as though I experience a lot of stuff from the past in the body. So like talking about, or not even just like in my life, if I have a memory from the past or something, like it stimulates a physiological response. And sometimes those feelings are kind of locked up and you don't let yourself feel them. And so you get stuck in a temporal state that is kind of like maybe in the past or the present or the future. Like I think a lot of anxiety is just being stuck in the no, that's gross, over the general. I think a lot of the anxiety I experience is like either being stuck in the past or the future. You know, like as a grad student, I'm always worried about like what's next, and I have a freeze response in my body. It doesn't let me feel things, and I would say that's being stuck in the future. And I think like the anxiety I experience around like say this of like, oh, I hope people don't see this and judge me for it. If I continue to think that, that's me just being stuck in this moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have you found that there's a technique or an approach that you use to break out of those locks of being in past, present, or future?
I don't know. I don't know if they're. I don't know about this belief of like there's techniques and stuff to fix everything.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think often when I'm feeling at my best, I'm not too prescribed to a certain technique. I'm not very religious. I was brought up Catholic, that's what my family is. We weren't very religious, but like I still went to Catholic school and I was baptized, got my first communion, that sort of thing. Did my first confession, which I don't remember. Hope I didn't say anything too bad in that one. But I've kind of drifted away from faith in a religious sense. And I think I have I don't think this is right for anyone else, but for me at least, when I am too stuck in like, oh, there is a technique that should be making me feel this way, and it either is or isn't, I get really stuck in like just quantifying existence and myself in a way that isn't healthy for me. It doesn't let me like let go of stuff. So I will use techniques, but I try not to like quantify how it's doing what it does, which is funny. I feel like that's probably what a lot of people who are religious do, is like they're just like, hey, I won't say how this is working and I'm just going to let it work on me. So maybe that's my, like meditation for me is a good version of that, or theater. But I don't like trying to codify it for other people. Because like I don't know what will work for other people. But for me, yeah, meditation has helped. Breathing helps. Sometimes it doesn't. Journaling, I don't know, which is just the masculine way of saying I have a diary. So, you know, I love that distinction. I'll journal it. It's like, why do you say you journal it and not I'll put that in my diary? Oh, because that's for girls. It's like, what? I was thinking about that the other day. Yeah, I don't. One thing I will say that I will often break me out of like stupors or stuff is just trying to keep learning stuff. Like that typically I get energy from that. And I think that energy can help me not get stuck in a phase of life. But I'm also like only 25, so
Is there a moment in your life where you felt most free? Like felt most alive or unlocked?
maybe, I don't know. Like in hindsight, yeah, I guess. Or no, in the moment, yeah, but I don't know if I was free or just being a douche.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. No, there's like been times in my life when, I really took good care of myself. Not that I'm not doing that now, but just like, there have been times when, everything aligns and it just clicks and you're a good actor and you are able to speak to people empathetically and you're able to articulate what you think and, you're on it. And then there are like but that doesn't, I don't know if that's like freeness or if that's just, my circumstances worked out really well for me at those points. I don't know if I would say that was like freeness. Like, I think I'm pretty free at any given point to do anything. I mean, in this interview, like everything I've said is unscripted. I'm free to do what I want. But just because I'm free doesn't necessarily mean I feel free. I think that's like, I think it's easy to get trapped in feelings and believe that's reality. Like, been trying to learn a lot about my own just capacity to like, I think this may be an issue with taking responsibility or something, but like, it's this thing of like, you're like, I don't, or maybe you aren't, but I'm like, I don't feel free, like I need to be free, I need to do something to make me feel free, and then it's kind of like, well, you are free. Like, I mean, in the sense of, you can be as free as you want. For me, I'm very privileged in that way, and I have a good education and all that stuff, and like, I have a lot of privileges, and just because I don't feel like I do, doesn't mean they're not there. So, I try to not get too caught up in like my feelings being the reflection of reality, because often they're not. I mean, reality is not a very good reflection of our feelings either. Like, TV doesn't really reflect how we feel. Sometimes it does, and that's when I would say we call it good television or good movies, but for the most part it's just kind of a pale reflection of what actual feeling is.
Are there any shows or books or people who you feel align themselves philosophically with you in a lot of the ways that you're talking about?
Ooh, I don't know.
Okay. How about this? Of the people that you've, seen or read, or who resonates most with you?
I think I'm such a I was raised in the era of phones and internet where it's kind of like whatever's most recent is the most gratifying and resonating with me, because I'm terrible at like remembering stuff. I'm very like now. And then I get trapped in the past, which is so ironic.
Interesting.
But like I've been thinking a lot about like I used to think like, oh, I like Plato and the Greeks and it's so romantic and they got it all right, and now I'm like, no, they got it all wrong, because I'm thinking more contemporary philosophers like Spivak or oh god, I can't remember their names. I don't, like Foucault or someone, and I'm sure when I'm like 50, I'll be like, oh, they got it all wrong, you know, but what is something that so I think philosophy is kind of a hard one to talk about, because I don't know, that changes so much, but like, I really I just like reading, no, I just like watching stupid YouTube videos. Like I love surfing through YouTube and just seeing what the algorithm tells me I like.
It's a fun wave to ride.
Yeah, and it's so
no work needs to be
uncommitted.
done.
There's no work. It's so easy. I don't have to like emotionally invest. I still do, which is weird. You get emotionally invested in like I love interrogating myself when I'm watching like a game person playing a video game, and I'm just like, how meta is this right now? And how am I emotionally invested in this right now? Like, what?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think right now my current phase is just like YouTube, have fun on YouTube, watch cat videos. I've been enjoying the cat videos.
Dude, I've been loving those just like silly like 1 minute videos that keep popping up that have like tens of millions of views. Those things are just like,
I'm just like, all right, it's junk food.
Yeah.
And I fully consume it, which is hilarious that I'm so like not junk food in my actual. If my body looked like the amount of junk food I consumed on the internet, like I would not be doing well. My heart would be very impacted.
What was so when you were younger, you trained to be a weightlifter, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Could you?
Well,
yeah. What's that story, and how did you get into it? And
I was really into sports, but not like team sports. I didn't like the idea of letting teammates down. It felt very like stressful, and I didn't like competing with others because I always thought they'd win, and I wanted to win. So I was like, ooh, who can I win against? Me. So I did a lot of like singular personal sports, like I skied, I rock climbed, I also mountain biking, and then I got into weightlifting. Well, I got into like Pilates in middle school, and then that slowly developed into like weightlifting in high school for the first couple of years, and then it got into like Olympic weightlifting when I was in sophomore year of high school, and I did that all throughout high school. I was decent at it. I mean, I was like number 2 in my state for a little bit, but at the same time, like certain sport, I've like come to realize like, oh, certain sports, all the people who were really in my weight class who were strong were playing football, not doing Olympic weightlifting. So for all I knew, like just being second for a year in your state in weight class doesn't mean much, but it made me feel decent. And then after that, I got really into bodybuilding. I think just totally bodybuilding is fascinating to me as like I think most people, not all people, but like most of the people I met and became friends with through bodybuilding, and that I see the most of myself in, were like just basically terrified of the world around them and wanted to feel like they had enough physical strength to overpower and have control. And it's funny, once I started meditating and not feeling so afraid of the world around me, I stopped wanting to weightlift as much until eventually I just kind of gave it up altogether. And then I started just doing like body weight training and flexibility training and my own kind of version of calisthenics stuff. I wouldn't even call it calisthenics, but that was sort of, so I've always been very regimented in my mind, which is like weightlifting taught me a lot of good skills, I would say. I think it can be really, for some people I think it's like super healthy and they're not afraid, and it just makes them feel sexy and hot and good, and that was for me too. And sometimes what I would just say for me, I can't speak for anyone else, but for me the underlying feeling was just I was afraid of people and I wanted to make sure they didn't think they could mess with me. And when I let go of that image, it kind of just went away. I mean, I still like every once in a while, it's funny, I'll be like, damn, remember when you were hot? like it's funny, like especially watching superhero movies, man, like it's so funny how badly it makes me want to start like drinking pre-workout again and like going to the gym for 3 hours a day and like getting just raw, because that's like the image of manhood that I see as being the pinnacle. One thing I will say is like when I was weightlifting, I was not very like. I know some weightlifters are incredibly intelligent, but that was not me, man. Because I wasn't reading, I wasn't engaging with like discussion or compassion. I was just working out all the time. Like I wasn't training this part of me. It was everything else. So I think while my muscles have gone down, this is big brain. It's become big brain. And I think for some people it's not worth it, and for some people it is. But that's a big part of who I was when I was younger.
Is there a part of your story that you think really makes you who you see yourself today? How you see yourself today?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably my dad and my mom. Just, it's the whole thing of like how you're raised is a large part of who you are. I was raised very, like my dad he is a photographer, but he was like a war journalist, so he traveled a lot and he saw a lot of action. He was a prisoner of war for a while. My mom was like a masseuse and an actress when she was younger, and then now she's an occupational therapist, so always like wanting to help people physically, and my dad always wanted to like tell stories. He's a very good storyteller because he's had a weird life. He's one of those people that you're just like, you shouldn't be alive. Like, the stuff you keep saying, like, people don't live through that. But both of them, my mom came from a family where her father was a first generation German immigrant, driven out by Hitler, and so she traveled a lot. So a heavy emphasis on travel, a heavy emphasis on like not assuming that you understand other people and just trying to like listen to people, which I actually really struggle with. And a pretty big emphasis on like just not necessarily like just be yourself, but like be okay with yourself. Because you can't always be yourself, but you can at least be okay with yourself. But I would say my dad was the biggest influence just in terms of like wanting to be an artist, being okay with the idea of not having a stable career, because he never really had a stable career and it turned out okay. So I think if I didn't have that inspiration when I was younger, I probably would have, because I guess my temperament is a little more cautious, wanting stability, so I probably wouldn't have been okay with going into something so precarious. And I also probably wouldn't, the other thing about my dad that's been interesting for me to think about recently is he's older, than most people's dads. And he looked very young when I was young, and it's only been in the last like 5 years that he's really aged a lot. So like getting to see at such a young age the progression of one's father, who he looks a lot like me, and I see a lot of myself in him, kind of seeing like the mortality catching up to him, or not even catching up, but just like seeing like, oh, everyone fucking ages, and that's going to happen to me one day, has been an interesting effect on me, where I do think about the future in that sense of just kind of like, wow, I won't always be young. My body isn't going to be okay forever. This is like, it's a huge privilege that I have a body that is functioning and isn't in pain all the time, or even if it's not in pain all the time, just is like on top of being white and a cis male, like, it's like I can run and like jump and do all that fun stuff. I guess I don't actually do that. I guess I'm just saying like, I don't have like dementia yet or something like that. And so I think it has given me a certain degree of like, oh, be really grateful for right now for having some health, some good health. Everyone has their issues, but I'm overall like pretty healthy, and that's something I'm very grateful for. And I don't know if I had my dad was younger and he still was like in his prime, I don't know if I'd be thinking about that yet. I'm not saying everyone has to, but I just think for me, I probably wouldn't be thinking about it. And when I was younger and he was to me younger and like kind of seemed unstoppable and all this stuff, like I was much more neglectful of my body. I would smoke cigarettes, not care. I drank more. I just didn't. I was kind of like, my dad did it and he's okay. It'll be okay for me. And it's like, no, you don't know that. And so it's helped me kind of calm down a bit about this. You know, people say like young people think they're immortal, but I think we kind of do. My case, well, actually, this is something I often like. I don't think young people think they're immortal. I just couldn't comprehend life after 21. Like, I didn't think I was going to live past 21. Not in a like, ooh, I was going to die. Maybe a bit of me thought that because there were some years where I was pretty rampant. But in the sense of just, it didn't seem real. And now it seems real. It's like, oh no, you just keep living. And you just got to deal with that every day. Which can be depressing, but at the same time, like, if you don't like let that completely tear you up inside, it can also be invigorating of like, oh, I survive a lot more than I think I have the capacity to survive. This is all some deep shit, man. I'm sorry, internet.
Oh my god, dude, this is it. This is literally, and you know, like
speaking from such a place of like, as though I know stuff and I don't know anything. It's
well,
hilarious.
You know things that you've experienced and that you know, we all construct stories of our lives.
Yeah.
And so you are reflecting with us the things that you've learned from the story that you've created.
Yeah, but I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. Like, change?
Yeah, well, hopefully it will.
Yeah,
hopefully, you know, in 10 years,
my peak, yeah.
when you're 35, we may be doing this again.
Oh, 35, man.
You know?
I think, I wonder, a part of me is like, I hope I'm a nice 30-year-old. Like, I hope I'm excited to be 30 and not just one of those guys who like, because it's so easy when you're younger to be like, I'm sure I'll be okay with being 30. And like, a part of me is like, what if you're really not okay with it? What if you're one of those people like you hit 30 and you're just like, fuck it, this is all over. Like, life is over, I give up. And so I'm really hoping I'm a chill 30-year-old that it comes and I'm just like, all right, I'm 30. Taking it, I'm gonna move. I'm gonna keep being good. Keep trying to improve myself. I hope that's honestly one of my hopes for anything that I think. I just hope I always want to keep trying to improve in some way. Not even if it's not myself, but just like I'm very afraid as a human of like I worry about it in acting and stuff that I'll like hit a point where I'm just like, I give up, like this fucking sucks. And so I get worried about that, and I just hope that's not who I am. I think particularly because, again, I was brought up the way my dad brought me up, the way my grandpa brought me up, like they were both very much, and my mom actually, they've all been very much people who were just kind of like, oh, this sucks, like, cool, just gonna keep doing it. And then at the end of their life, they were like, wow, that worked. Who would have guessed? So I'm really hoping, man.
You know, it's crazy. Like, you know, you look at some people who, at least the other day, I was like looking at, I was thinking, okay, all these people that I know, they went to high school, great high schools, they all went to great colleges, they're all getting married and having kids. And then I was like thinking, oh, what about this one girl? And I like checked her out, and she like lives in Australia playing soccer for fun. I don't know what her job is, but she looks like she's having a blast.
Yeah.
And it's amazing just all the different avenues that your life or people's lives can go.
Yeah.
Without having to do really anything. Like, you don't have to go to high school. I'm not advocating that. I'm advocating for, you know, following whatever, you know, your soul is pulling you towards. But like you can live a whole life without really doing much of anything. Or having to do anything.
I think if you have a certain amount of privilege, you can. And yes, there are people, like, I remember a friend of mine, he, like, traveled through India and stuff, and I've been to India as well, but he did it later in life. I was younger when I went, so I wasn't really thinking about big picture stuff when I was there. But he, like, traveled through as, like, right after college, so that was, like, his, like, coming to understand the world time, and he went through, like, India and Tibet and Mongolia and all this stuff. And he kind of came back with this mentality of like, screw it, man, so many people live on the bare minimum and they you know, make their food, they live their life, they're just happy and da-da, and it's not wrong that there are a lot of people who have good, fulfilling lives and don't, go to Yale, don't achieve in the Western, like, hierarchical sense we think of achievement. But at the same time, like, it's very easy for my friend who's like a white dude to say that and just give up everything and become a metal, like, or a carpenter or whatever the heck you want to do.
Yeah,
or a miner
he
or
has a
something.
choice. He has, like,
Yeah, he has a choice, and to him that's a choice of freedom, whereas to other people, I don't know how often those, like, I shouldn't assume to know that they were just happy with it, and maybe, because a lot of people can learn to live in happiness even in a life that isn't the life they wanted, and to assume that, oh, these are all people who were just born into it, and like, life is great, and we just learned to live with, like, maybe they had dreams when they were kids, maybe they wanted to be like, I don't know, the prince or princess or prime minister, or, they wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer, and life just never gave it to that, whereas, at least in the case of some people I know who are kind of choose that rustic lifestyle, I'm kind of like, that's to me the ultimate expression of your privilege. And that's irregardless of where you come from. That's like, if you have a good family and a good education and you choose to just be like, man, screw it, I'm too good for participating in the greater social sphere, I'm just going to live in the woods. Like, I think that's great for you, but when people choose that and they want me to, like, think that that's somehow a good moral, or not it is a moral choice, but, like, think that they deserve a pat on the back for that, or that they're somehow hacked the system and they see the truth, I'm just kind of like, not so much. Like, you can do that in a way that most people who would choose to do that we just call homeless, and actually have to live on the street and not, like, in a cabin somewhere. Yours is a romanticized version of being homeless, and maybe if you were born into a different family, your version of, I'm just gonna not put up with this and go live my own life, wouldn't be a fun one. It would be one where you actually are, like, in danger, and, like, you're put at risk of being, seriously hurt, because we don't treat our homeless people very well in this country.
I'll say, with, talking about privilege and everything, it is so important to be aware of this, and to also learn how to, like, listen, but also express, like, to be aware of that kind of privilege, because, like, I've been taking classes, I've been reading books, but it hasn't been a priority of mine. I have the privilege that it hasn't really been a priority of mine to focus on privilege. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I certainly look up to you on, like being aware of that, and also speaking truth about it. And
right.
And I guess,
I don't know, I'm a little uncomfortable by it though, because at the same time, like, even saying all this now, like, part of me is like, but it's also my privilege that I can focus on it. Like, I don't know if there's a good way to go about it. I might just be an elitist who's like, oh, I'm looking down on people who decide to live by the land or something. It's like, I hope I don't come across that way. Maybe I do, and I really don't mean it. Like, if you want to do what you do it. I just know for me, I don't want to just turn my back on, or not that people are doing this. I don't know. There's not a really good way to discuss it. I want to always try and be engaging. And I think that's because I think for me, whereas for a lot of people it is probably a good thing to, like, disengage and go live on your own or something. I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know. But for me, I think having a more depressed personality, a more anxious personality, that doesn't do well in solitude. So when people choose to do that, I'm a little like, ooh, I don't think I could do that. So maybe my judgment of their privilege is actually just my fear of what solitude and what it would mean to be, alone in the woods by myself. And that's why I don't know. Man, this is all so weird. Like, I can poke so many holes in everything I've said. And that's just how my brain works. As I'm sure other people's brains maybe don't, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, that's just a very active brain that and mind that also is the way that I see it is like you care about expressing, finding out, and shedding light on the truth.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
don't care about
and that.
that. Well,
Right, totally. Well, but
yeah, but I don't know if there is a truth.
Exactly,
Man.
but that's also the paradox of it all, right?
Yeah, I think. So, like, for me personally, I guess my goal is just to try and be as kind and compassionate as I can, as much as I can, while also understanding that, like, I haven't always been, and I probably won't always be, but, like, just doing my best in that regard. When it comes to things like expressing the truth or shining a light, like, I personally have recently, in the past, like, month or two, really started interrogating this idea, because I think a lot of artists were fed this idea of, like, there is such a thing as truth. There is such, and I don't mean relativity. I don't mean, like, everything is true or not true depending on where you're coming from. I mean this idea of truth that I think we often, as artists, so I'm only talking about myself as an artist now, I engage with and am asked to believe in, which is like a fundamentally, or not even a fundamental, like, I just don't interrogate it. I take it for granted. And I believe there's such a thing. I don't ask myself, like, what, like, whose truth? I don't ask myself, like, well, if there is such a thing as truth, who is it letting, who is it not thinking of? Who's accessing that truth? Who's allowed to access the truth? How do we access the truth? If we can't access something, or if something is just and then, like, often, at least, again, this is just me thinking about my acting training, like, a lot of people have, like, said this to me, where it's like, well, there's just the truth and you know it when you get it, and it's kind of like, well, if it's just a natural phenomena that exists, why do I have to prove that it's there? It should just be there. It's like gravity. I don't need to, I guess some people do need to prove gravity is there. I don't, yeah. But I can observe it everywhere. I don't need a technique to realize gravity's there. Maybe I do. Maybe this is a stupid argument I'm making, because I'm thinking about it like science kind of came along and I guess we didn't really think about gravity before that. But gravity existed before science.
It was just awareness of it.
Awareness of it. And so when it comes to any, like, claims of there being things that are just there that we can discover and share with people, I don't think that that's not true. I've just, in the past month or two, I've started trying to, like, observe in myself, like, oh, what do I mean by that? Am I just sharing my own personal experience? Am I sharing someone else's? I don't know, man. I don't know. But I have been interrogating the idea of truth and whether or not that is something that I am using in a way that isn't just me, like, projecting my own personality onto people. Because I think often when people are like, here's my truth, they're just, which is great, but, like, they are unaware, if someone is unaware that all they're doing is projecting their own personality onto other people, that can be pretty damaging, like, we do that to our kids sometimes.
I wish that people would, like, I know, like, I just watched this video of myself from 10 years ago, and it was awful. The experience was truly awful, and I was like, why am I not dead right now? Why didn't people kill me at that point? Because it was just, like, so ridiculous, and the blind spots, that people, that we have of ourselves, and I part of this, project and experiment is, like, seeing what blind spots can I see about myself now, but then also allowing, a documentation of another person talking, and then having them also be able to go back and rewatch and see, like, for you to watch this and see, if you choose to.
Ultimate fear.
But anyway, we only have 3 minutes left on the battery, so I'm just going to ask you two quick questions, or one quick question, and then ask you if you have any final thoughts. What is the memory that you have that brings you the most light?
It's like, I think my first memory, which was, I remember waking up in the sunlight back in New Mexico, like in my childhood room where the sun was shining and I was so warm. I heard my mom's voice calling my name, and it's like the first time I remember being like, oh, Liam, that's me. And I remember like, I don't know if it was like a bed or like it's more sensations I remember than it, but I remember like the feeling of like getting up and running towards this voice, and then I fucking ran into the door. So that's like the perfect epitome of just how silly and stupid human like I am. Of this, like I was just so happy to go see my mom, and I just ran into the door. And so it's like this sunlit memory that ends with a very clear like BAM! I assume it was the door, it could have been a wall. Like, all I know is I hit something hard. Yeah, thinking of that, I think it's a good, like thinking of this whole thing, I'm talking now and being vulnerable and stuff, but like, some people aren't going to like it, and I guess that's okay, but it's good for me to remember that I'm pretty stupid as a person and goofy, and I think that's the fact that my happiest memory is of me just unashamedly wanting to go do something and then running into a wall or a door or a person, who knows, is a good reminder for me of like, oh, like I'm going to probably make some mistakes in how I speak and what I do, but hopefully I can laugh at it and learn from it. I don't know what I would learn from that experience. Like, check if there's a door.
Yeah, look in front of you.
Make sure your eyes are open. Yeah, I was so... I don't even know.
Well, unfortunately, we have 1 minute on the battery. So what else would you like to leave us with? Any final thoughts or maybe advice to your future self or your former self or something?
My final thoughts are like, sorry if I offended anyone. Hope I didn't. And if I did, I hope it was for like good reason and that I learned from it. And advice to like future self is just like, try and take it easy, man. Maybe don't watch this video. No, I don't know. I don't really have advice for my future self. I'm sorry.
Cool. Anything else? That's it?
No, love you guys. Love anyone who watches this, and love working with you, Kenny.
Wow.
It's a very inspiring project you're doing.
Thank you, Liam.